The most basic type of function is what is called a linear function, and that's what we're going to take a quick look at today. We've already seen linear functions, so this is going to be a quick overview review of everything you've seen. First, the slope. Slope is a measure of the steepness of a line, or how quickly it increases or decreases. The slope formula is m equals y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. This formula should be very familiar to us. So if we want to find the slope between these 2 points, negative 3, 5, and 2, negative 1, the first point is x1 comma y1. The second point is x2 comma y2. So my slope is equal to y1, which is 5, minus y2, which is negative 1, over x1, which is negative 3, minus 2, which is our y2. And then we just simplify. Add in the opposite. 5 plus 1 is 6. Negative 3 and negative 2 is negative 5. And so the slope between these 2 points is negative 6/5. Straightforward, just using a formula. Another formula we should recognize from Algebra 1 is the slope-intercept form. The slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b, where m is the slope of the graph, and b is the important y-intercept on the graph. So we should be able to find the equation of any line or graph any line if it's in this slope-intercept form. First thing we need to know is m, the slope. So we could pick any 2 points. These 2 points here marked in red we're going to go with. And notice the graph goes up 2, rises 2, and runs 3. To get to the next point. So we're going to say the slope is equal to rise over run 2/3. And the y-intercept, the second important thing we need, the b, is where it crosses the y-axis, in this case at negative 1. So we can make our equation y, or since we're talking about functions, we'll say f of x equals m, my slope of 2/3, times the x plus the b, which in this case the b is negative, so we'll put negative 1. So for our function, f of x is 2/3 x minus 1. We can go the other direction as well. We can graph any equation in slope-intercept form. Y equals negative 1/2 x plus 3. You'll see this negative 1/2 in front of the x is in the position of the slope, which means the rise is negative 1 and the run is 2. And we're going to put that negative on the numerator. It doesn't matter if you put the negative on the numerator or the denominator. You just cannot put it on both. Choose one and it'll do just fine. And then finally, what's added to the end is the b, or the y-intercept. That's where we're going to start our graph. That y-intercept is at 3. The slope then tells us how the graph changes. We said we're going to rise negative 1 and run 2 points. And there is our second point. And then we're ready to connect the dots on this graph to get this beautiful line from slope-intercept form. That should all up to this point be review from what you saw in Algebra 1. We're going to add an extra formula, though, called the point slope formula. What's nice about slope-intercept is it goes fast and it's easy, but we have to know, to use the slope-intercept formula, we have to know that all-important b, that y-intercept. And in reality, most of the time, we don't know the y-intercept. We just know a point and the slope. So I've got another important equation for you to add to your repertoire, and that's this guy here. It's called the point slope formula. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. We still have our m, or we still have our slope, but now instead of a y-intercept, we just have a generic point x1, y1. So if we want the equation that goes through the point negative 4, 2 and has a slope of 3/4, now you'll see we have a point, not the y-intercept. So we don't know what b is. We can't do the y equals mx plus b. We do know the slope is 3/4. It's going to rise 3, run 4. So our equation is y minus the y1, which is from our point. Our point is x1, y1. So in this case, y1 is 2, equals m. M is my slope, which is 3/4, times x minus the x1. Well, the x1 is -4, so minus a negative will make it a positive 4. So the equation that goes through -4, 2 with a slope of 3/4 is y minus 2 equals 3/4 x plus 4. Normally, we like to play with this and tweak it so that it becomes slope-intercept form, which we can do really easy in 2 steps. First, we need to get rid of the parentheses, because there's no parentheses in slope-intercept form. So y minus 2 equals 3/4 times x is 3/4 x. And 3/4 of 4, 3 times 4 is 12, divided by 4 is 3. And then we'll add 2 to both sides to get the y alone. And we see y equals 3/4 x plus 5. And now we know what the y-intercept is, and it would be really easy to graph. We would start at 5, rise 3, run 4. So point slope form we'll use whenever we do not know the y-intercept. And we need to make sure we know the slope. So what if we don't know the slope? What if we just know 2 points on our graph? And this is actually much more common in the real world when we're dealing with linear functions. We know a couple points. We want to connect them with the line. What is the equation? We always like to try and use the slope-intercept form, but we don't have it. Please don't forget to start with the point slope formula, which you should work on memorizing. The sooner you have that memorized, the better. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. But to do that, we need to know the slope. So first, we have to calculate the slope. So our slope formula is y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. We've actually got a couple points, and it doesn't matter which point we call point 1 and which one we call point 2 as long as they stay in that order. So I just like to pick the first one to be x1, y1, and the second point to be x2, y2. So plugging those in, y1 is 5, minus y2 is -1, over x1, which is 4, minus x2, which is 1. 5 minus a -1 is like 5 plus 1, 6. 4 minus 1 is 3. And 6/3 reduces to a nice, beautiful 2. We have a slope. And we've got a couple points. We can pick either point. We've already said 4, 5 is point 1. So let's go with it. In our function, y minus the y1. y1 is 5. Equals m, the slope. The slope we just found out is 2. Times x minus x1. The x1 point is 4. And now this equation will go through the points 4, 5, and 1, -1. Y minus 5 equals 2 times x minus 4. The only possible problem is it's not in the pretty slope-intercept form. Sometimes we can leave it like this, which is nice, but it's not too much work to distribute. Y minus 5 equals 2x minus 8. And then add the 5 to both sides so that we get in that pretty slope-intercept form. Y equals 2x minus 3, or f of x equals 2x minus 3. So the big new formula, the point slope formula, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Also a quick review of what we know about linear functions, how to find the slope, what the slope-intercept equation is. Take a look at the homework assignment and let your instructor know if you have any questions.